Hey you guys, it's Miss Endicott back here for part 2 of our dietitian series where you ask questions, my mom / dietitian Di answers the questions for you guys. And so this episode, she answers questions about athletics and athlete questions for a dietitian, and then COVID pandemic related questions. And so just a little helpful tip in the description down below. I am a real YouTuber. In the description down below, there's timestamps with your questions next to it. So if you want to skip ahead or you want to review a answer, feel free to go to those timestamps so that you can get the answers that you're looking for. And before we start, I want to say a huge thank you to my mom for helping me out with this video. And then a big thank you to you guys for all of your awesome questions. We had a great time looking them over, and I know that my mom had a great time researching them. And also it's interesting for myself to get more up-to-date answers to these questions as well. So we hope you enjoy. Okay, so this first category is about nutrition and the athlete.
Hi again, it's Dietitian Diana. I wanted to, before I started into this section of questions, I wanted to say that, first of all, again, the questions were excellent, and I am very interested in nutrition as it relates to the athlete and athletics, but I certainly wouldn't call myself an expert in this area. I had to do some reading of research and articles and up-to-date recommendations in regards to this area of nutrition. And I also want to say that if you need more information on any of the stuff that I'm talking about, but specifically about this area, I would recommend, again, that you either talk to your GP, or there are centers that employ dietitians that specialize in this area. So for example, at the University of Guelph, a lot of universities will have their health and performance departments, and a lot of them have several dietitians on staff, and that's what they work with in terms of, again, nutrition and the athlete. Colleges have the same. If you end up going and being on a team, a varsity team in, again, university or colleges, a lot of times they have access to that kind of information. So just wanted to do this to give you that preamble before I get into answering the questions.
Awesome. Okay, so this person asked in the first question, I want to lower my body fat but maintain a muscle mass. So I would like a calorie count per day for an active lifestyle and the suggested food choices to lower body fat. Ideally, how would I know the amount of calories I should aim to burn per day?
Great question. So there are equations that have been tested by researchers that help us as professionals to figure out what an estimated energy intake would be for an individual. It becomes a little bit more tricky with the population of adolescents, which you are, because not only do we have to consider the basal metabolic rate, so BMR, and what BMR stands for is the amount of energy or calories, which is the same thing, necessary for your body to function at rest. So not only do you have to calculate that, but then you also, in your case, would have to incorporate age, growth rate, and activity. So if your BMR, let's say, was 1,500 calories, then you would have to add those other criteria as well, or energy that goes along with those, and then your energy, estimated energy needs might be something like 23 or 2,500 calories, but that's how it's estimated. And then I guess the question is, so that's looking at your energy needs. And so then the other part of the question is looking at how do I maintain my muscle mass but decrease body fat? I think it's really important in terms of the diet then that, so you know the energy, so now you want to find the appropriate diet that provides generally that amount of energy. And it's not just one macronutrient. And as you know, most of you know that, or the macros we call them, there's there's fat, protein, carbohydrate. So, and then of course there's the micronutrients, your vitamins and minerals. So it's really, the next step would be, it's very important to get a good balance in terms of your diet, in ensuring that you're getting the adequate amount of those different nutrients to provide you with the energy, the protein, and nutrition that you require for the growth, for the activity, etc. So to answer that question is very difficult, because I would need to sit with that with a person, and I need to see what their needs are, and then also look at what they're eating and try to put together recommendations and meal plans that would support that particular individual.
Awesome. This was a very popular question.
Okay.
What are some good sources of protein?
Yeah, I'm not surprised, because protein has been very much in the media, and certainly in the area of athletics, about building muscle and ensuring adequate, sometimes excessive amounts of protein. And so, yeah, I can understand that would be a very popular question. So I think, first of all, it's understanding what protein is. So protein is one of the macronutrients, and why they call it macro means big. And so when you look at the molecular size of protein, it's large. And so, versus micronutrients, so the vitamins and minerals, they're smaller, and our needs for them are smaller too. So hence the reason why. So what a protein is what it is. It's either a chain of one or many amino acids put together. So, and depending on what that protein is, it then dictates sort of how many chains of amino acids. And amino acids are the building blocks of these proteins. So in our body, our protein is necessary for the structural being and the function of our muscles, our tissues, even our sort of skeletal, like our bones. It's a really important part in terms of the functioning of our body. So then we look at, okay, so what about protein in food? Because that's where we get our protein. And it's interesting because our body, when you look at amino acids, and there's over 20 amino acids, our body makes some amino acids on its own. Those are called non-essential amino acids. And there are some essential amino acids, which I think there's 5 of them. Anyway, that our body doesn't make, so we need to get from our diet. So, in regards to protein, where do we find that in our diet? And most foods contribute some type of protein to our diet, but the majority of our protein comes from animals. So anything, I usually say to people, things that have eyes that we eat. So your chicken, your turkey, your beef, your pork, your fish, those are all excellent sources of protein. But we also get protein from plants as well. So we know that we get them from our, so the plant proteins, so our legumes, and those would be things like soya products, edamame, for example, is a good example. Our nuts and seeds are also good examples. And we get some from our grains as well. So there's a lot of talk, it's quite popular recently, although these are ancient grains, things like quinoa, spelt, we know those are high protein sources as well. So I am always a big supporter of mixing our protein intake, making sure that you get animal protein plus plant protein. However, I recognize that some people, for various reasons, eat only plant proteins, and you certainly can get the nutrition that you require from a protein perspective. And we talked about vegetarianism in the last session, right? Mm-hmm. So you can certainly get the nutrition and the protein that you require from the plant proteins. And then depending on what level of vegetarianism you are you vegan or some derivative of vegetarianism, then you might need some help from a supplement in terms of whether it's your iron or your B12. So I don't think I've missed any examples, but that's basically our major sources of protein. I also want to let you know there is a little bit of protein in fruits and vegetables too, but they're not our main sources. So, but you do need a mix, right? Because you need those fruits and vegetables for those micronutrients that perhaps our meats and our grains won't provide for us.
So it's not just boiled chicken after every workout to get that protein.
That's correct.
Okay, so this next question is, in regards to working out, can you talk about what you eat and when you'd eat it? What foods are good to eat before and after a workout?
Okay, so the answers I'm going to give here relates to workouts that are quite intensive. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, and certainly we support any kind of activity, but there isn't really any recommendations if you go out for a bike ride with your family or with your friends, or if you go for a walk. Generally, good healthy eating will support this. What I'm looking at and what I'm answering the question for are those intense periods of activity. So for example, if you're on the swim team and you're going in the morning for a workout, like you're going into the pool in the morning, or if you're a skater, like if you're a hockey player and you're going for power skating, or there's a soccer game coming up that you're playing in, and you play a lot. So this is what I'm going to be talking about. So I did look up information about this and what the most recent recommendations are in regards to sort of feeding your body for these activities. So let's start with that morning practice, let's say, that early morning practice, or let's even talk about, and that would be similar to a pre-game. So this is, what do you eat pre-game? So I'm not talking about the meal. It's like, you've maybe had, it's just something to provide you with sufficient energy, calories to get you through that. And then we'll talk about recovery after that. So an AM practice or a pre-game, so this would be what you'd want to try to do is eat an hour before, maybe 2 if you can. Again, you got to leave a little bit of time for digestion. And but let's say an hour to 2. So what you would be looking at is something small. So perhaps a small bowl of cereal with some milk. Maybe you'd be looking at maybe 8 ounces of a homemade smoothie with a little bit of yogurt, some fruit blended into that, and then you do the workout or you do the game, and then you'd follow up. Let's say it's in a morning practice, then you'd follow up with a full breakfast after that. Or if it's a game, then you would either go to recovery snack after, or you'd have your meal after that. So really what you're doing there pre-game or pre-workout is providing sufficient energy so you can do your best over that, say, hour, but it's not also overloading with a lot of protein and fat so that it's slowing you down and decreasing your efficiency during that particular event. So now let's talk about recovery. So now you've just played that, you've worked out quite hard for 60 minutes or 75 minutes, and now it's the post. So 30 minutes post recovery, the recommendation is at that time to eat again because you're wanting to reload your muscles, particularly with its glycogen stores is what you're looking at that point. So what's recommended is to have a snack that includes protein and carbohydrate at that time. So an example might be, say, graham crackers with some peanut butter on that and a piece of fruit. So you're getting your carbohydrate and your protein after that. So this is, again, it's 30 minutes post exercise. Or you might get, say, a Greek yogurt where we know it has extra protein, and adding fruit to that. So that's reloading your muscles 30 minutes after. And then, of course, you would follow up with your dinner later on. Now, timing of meals. So now I'm not talking about the snacks. I'm not talking about the pre-game or the pre-workout or the post-workout. I'm talking about eating. So let's say you're going for a run. and you're going to be running, say, for half an hour, 45 minutes, and you're going to have breakfast that morning. So what are you going to eat in preparation of that? So sort of 3 hours prior to the event, what you're looking for again is you're focusing on proper digestion. So you don't want anything high fat, you don't want anything high fiber, because both of those things are going to slow down the digestion, and it has been shown that it translates into your performance after. So again, you're wanting something that has carbohydrate, protein, and some fat, but you're not wanting too much on the fat. So a good example for that is so let's say lunch is coming, and then you're at a swim meet and you're going to be swimming. So lunch is say 11:12 and you're going to be swimming. You have an event at 2 o'clock. You don't want to eat the fries at 11 or 11:30, but you might want to have, say, for example, a sandwich, an egg salad sandwich or a tuna sandwich, great protein in that, a piece of fruit, maybe some juice with that, or a glass of milk, even maybe some chocolate milk. So that's certainly giving you the carbohydrate, the protein, the fat that you need, but it's not overloading on those things I talked about.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so this next question says, I'm a dancer, and I always get lightheaded, dizzy, shaky, and pains in my chest, not even halfway through a routine. Or even just doing everyday things like going up the stairs or just standing up from laying down makes me extremely dizzy and lightheaded that most of the time I have to sit down or sometimes even pass out because I'm iron deficient. But I hate taking my iron pills. What are some ways I can get my iron without taking the pills or eating hearty foods like red meat?
When I was doing my research for this particular question, it was quite interesting to me the amount of information and the articles that came up in regards to iron deficiency in the athlete. It's a very common problem, and they cited a few reasons why. Number one, because of the fact that there's this intensity of training that's happening for that athlete, there's an increase then in red blood cells production, and to support that red blood cell production, iron's required. So that's one reason. Another reason, especially for the adolescent athlete, is because they're still growing and with muscle growth and such. So there's more iron needed in that situation as well. And the person who asked the question nicely cited some of the side effects that go along with low iron levels, which can be quite scary. Things like feeling nauseous, feeling short of breath because, again, there's not enough oxygen carrying capability in terms of, again, the iron is part of the red blood cells that provides the oxygen throughout our body so that we can breathe and supply our body with enough oxygen during that event. So if there's not enough of that iron and oxygen, you can get shortness of breath because of it. There was cited increased infections because their immune system's down a little bit because of the lack of the iron, and then just overall lack of energy. They're fatigued, sleeping more. So these are all possible side effects of iron deficiency anemia. So the studies I read and where they looked at diet and or diet and supplementation were, again, very interesting to me. And what I found, or what the general consensus was that there at the beginning of the treatment, or when iron deficiency is diagnosed and iron levels are low, many times the athlete needs diet and iron supplementation. And I'm sorry to say that to whomever asked the question, because I really got the sense that they don't want to be on the iron supplement. And I do understand that. I do, because A, a lot of people don't like taking medications, and or B, the iron supplements can cause some side effects, mostly gastrointestinal side effects. They can cause problems with stomach upset. They can cause constipation. They change the color of our bowel movements. It can be a tough medication to take. But the general consensus in regards to the data that I read was that the iron deficiency needs to be treated, and it needs to be treated relatively vigorously, intensely, so that we can get that iron level up to a safe level. And then maybe after that, the supplement can be stopped, and then the diet can continue on its own. So I think in the question, some diet sources were correctly brought up. So for example, the red meats are the number one source of good iron, and it's because the iron in the meats, the form of the iron is called heme iron, and it's well absorbed. So in our red meats particularly, so our beef and our pork are good suppliers of that. And the other place where we can get some good iron is foods that are supplemented with iron. So there are some cereals. So I don't know if you like cream of wheat, but cream of wheat has iron supplementation. That's a hot cereal. But some of our other cereals, the cold cereals, have iron that is added to it as well, which is a good source. And then we get to, and that's actually generally in a non-heme form, which would be the form that we also see in our plants. So like our green leafy vegetables like spinach that we all know that's higher in iron. And also lentils and beans have some iron in them too, but it's not as much and is not in the same form as the red meats and hence the reason why they provide us with more iron. So again, it's that mixed diet, maybe having the red meats plus some of those leafy greens and the plant proteins plus those fortified cereals, getting a good mixture of that. And then again, I can't overemphasize the importance of the iron supplementation, and then checking your iron levels to ensure that they are coming up, and then working with your physician and knowing when that can be stopped, and then just looking at diet on its own.
Okay. So this next section is all about living in a time of COVID-19.
Yes.
Okay, so our first question is, what are some good snack options to keep you full rather than to continue snacking throughout the day?
That's a great question. A lot of, when I'm reading things online and social media, a lot of people talk about snacking, and it makes sense because we're not doing our typical routine. Maybe we're more bored, and a lot of times we turn to the fridge and eating during those times. And I'm not saying that snacking is bad, because again, we just talked about the athlete before this, and also I'm talking to people, adolescents who are still growing and have high energy needs. So snacking is a big part of your diet. It comes down to what you're snacking on and how much. And I really want to talk about the portion sizes, because I think in North America, where most of us are very, very fortunate in terms of our food security, how much food we have and available for us. And I believe as a society, we have lost touch with what a portion size is. So, and in my teaching, when I'm with patients, a lot of times I'm talking to them about what a portion size is. And I would say the majority of the time people are baffled by the portion sizes that I show them that are recommended. So let's get back to what the question are. What is some good snacks? So let's talk about getting to the plant proteins again. So nuts and seeds and trail mixes, those are great snacks. But you know what? The portion size is important, because if we're looking at trying to watch the amount of calories or energy that we're taking in, we don't want to eat the whole bag. You might want to, just out of curiosity one time, just maybe measure out what a half a cup of trail mix looks like, or a quarter cup of walnuts or nuts. And then sort of base it accordingly. And when you think, well, that's not enough, like, a quarter cup of nuts, that's not enough. Well, then maybe have an apple with it and cut that up, and that'll fill you up, the combination and the fiber in the apple. So there's going to be a trend when I go through these examples. Another good example might be some cut up vegetables, right? So whatever you've got in the fridge, and I know it takes time, but it's okay because you've got the time. It's COVID-19, you're inside, okay? So cut up your vegetables, your cucumbers, your radishes, your broccoli, your celery, and then get some hummus. Hummus is a great snack as well. You can dip it in there. Get your the peppers, all the different types of orange, red, green peppers, and then measure out about a quarter cup or a third a cup of hummus, and that would then be a good snack as well. Let's think of another example. For example, let's look at fruit. So there's just I know. In Canada, we don't necessarily always have fresh fruit available, or the ones that we like, but there is certainly a large array of fruits in the frozen section. So whether those are pieces of mango, or again, your apple cut up, or your pear slices, and then maybe have a tablespoon or two of peanut butter with that, and dip your fruit into that. It tastes amazing. It's just a great snack, and it gives you the fruit and the fiber, which is filling, and then the peanut butter as well. But you are measuring the amount. And as a result, you're watching and controlling the energy that you're taking in. Greek yogurt, another great snack. And it's also higher in protein, so it'll fill you quicker. And then you can put some berries on top, so you're getting that nice variety there as well. A bowl of cereal with milk. And again, just, don't keep filling it up. Have your bowl of cereal, put your milk on, and put the cereal and the milk away. If you're still hungry later, get a piece of fruit, or, cut up a banana and put it on top, because that'll fill you up. Hard-boiled eggs. In our house, often we will hard-boil 5 or 6 eggs up, and they can stay in the fridge for a week. So if you're hungry, just crack an egg open and crack the hard-boiled egg and eat that. And again, that's 6-7 grams of protein. There's probably 4 grams of fat. And if you want a few crackers with that, or a piece of bread, that's a good snack as well. And the final thing is, you can buy now pouches of edamame that you just have to throw into the microwave, and you microwave those, heat those up, add a little bit of salt for taste. That's a great snack.
Okay, so this next question is, what helps with a poor appetite? Since I've been at home, I find myself not wanting to eat as much as I would during a school day.
Wow, so talk about the opposite swing, right? So there we've got the people who want to eat more, and then the other side where someone has more of a poor appetite and not eating as much. So for a dietitian, both send up a red flag, but I would say the person with the poor appetite, not eating as much, sends up a little bit more of a red flag. And the question is to me, why? Why is the appetite down? Well, the first thing that came into my mind is it might be because your activity level's down a little bit, and so you're not expending as much energy, so you're not as hungry. So that, and maybe there is no concern. It's just that you're eating smaller portions and you're still getting the nutrition that you require, but you're just not eating as much as you did before. I guess the other parts of the question I would add to that, if you were the person who asked the question, if you were in front of me, I'd say, have you lost weight? And is it a concerning amount of weight? And do you have any other issues that you're complaining about that go along with this decrease in your appetite? Like, do you have gastrointestinal issues, some nausea, vomiting? Do you have decreased energy? And if you answer yes to those things, then I would suggest contacting your GP. And if it goes, like if this is something that continues on, it needs to be looked at, and to see sort of what's actually sort of the cause of that.
What is the absolute worst thing to eat daily during this pandemic? And this part, we are all stuck in our houses.
Yeah, this made me laugh. This is a good one. And it's good on so many levels. What is the absolute worst food that you can eat? So the first thing that came into my mind is that, and I'm being silly about this, but you know, I have a severe kiwi allergy, kiwi fruit. So if for people who have allergies, I would say don't eat the food you're allergic to, because that's the worst. So I'm not going to be eating kiwi fruit while I'm here locked up because of COVID-19. That's silly, but it's just like this sort of, you know, being light on that. You know what? So my answer to this is there is no worst absolute food to eat. I'm not about that. I'm about moderation. And you could tell that from the answers from before, that I'm about portion sizes. So, you know, in our house, if you came to visit us here, you would see that there are potato chips here. You'd see that there's ice cream. You'd see that there's chocolate here too. And what I've strived as a dietitian and a mother all my life with my kids is understanding that those foods are okay to have in moderation. And so making sure that you eat a balanced diet, that you can treat yourself to those kind of foods, and then also make sure that you incorporate exercise in your diet. And because that is healthy eating, and that's healthy living, and that's having control over food versus the food having control over you.
You exposed me there. This next question is, how important is vitamin D during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Right. So this now we're talking about our micronutrients, and so we're going to talk about vitamin D, and then the next question is going to be about vitamin C. So vitamin D is a vitamin. It's a micronutrient, so it's smaller in molecular size. We don't need as much of it. And vitamin D is one of our fat-soluble vitamins. So what that means is that in our body, it works very much the same way as our body transports and metabolizes or uses fat. The other thing about fat-soluble vitamins is that we store them. So when we take in vitamin D, our body is able to store some so that deficiency doesn't perhaps happen as easy because we have the store of them. So vitamin D is a really interesting vitamin because we call it the sunshine vitamin. As many of you know, if we go outside, there is something in our skin, a precursor in our skin, that with the ultraviolet rays allows us to make vitamin D, which is pretty fantastic. And so just going outside every day, you know, for 10 to 15 minutes, in the sun, well, even if it's not sunny, because ultraviolet rays we know comes through the cloud, helps us make that vitamin D. But interestingly enough, in Canada, there is deficiency in vitamin D. And so why is that? So why do we see that deficiency? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it's the latitude of where we live. So we are farther away from the equator where the sun is. So as a result, our sun exposure is less than it might be if we live down further south. So for example, our populations, our Aboriginal population that live very high up north, they have a much higher risk of vitamin D deficiency, and then it decreases as we go down further south. So very interesting. Mm-hmm. Skin pigmentation is another thing. So the darker our skin, the less we're able to produce vitamin D. So that's another interesting thing. And then clothing, because clothing, as we know, we wear, you know, with sun and ultraviolet rays and skin cancer, of course, we're recommended to wear sunscreen and wear clothing. But sort of the more clothing we wear, the less vitamin D we absorb. So again, looking at our neighbors up north, because of the cold, and then also maybe because of the mosquitoes and black flies and such, they might wear more clothing and as a result not produce as much vitamin D. So it's a good question. So and so because, you know, we're indoors more, absolutely, you know, we might be producing less vitamin D. And, you know, people who are institutionalized, so for example, our senior population, or say, for example, patients who are unable to get outside as much because of different disabilities and such, you know, their vitamin D levels might be less because they just don't go outside, because it's harder for them to go outside and they don't go outside as much. So I would say for your population, in terms of where we're living, assuming that you eat a healthy diet, that even though with the COVID, you are still going outside and getting some rays outside, that most of you are probably not vitamin D deficient. I think you're probably quite safe. However, in terms of the adult population, in terms of the adults I work with, many of them get their vitamin D tested, and many of them do have to take vitamin D, and especially during the winter months. But again, I would say as an adolescent, I can't make just a general overall recommendation, right? Because it's just too difficult. I'd have to work with everybody individually. But I feel pretty safe in saying that the majority of you probably have a very good and healthy vitamin D level. Where do we get vitamin D? Well, and what is the role of vitamin D? Well, vitamin D, the biggest role, it has a lot of different functions, but the biggest role is to help the absorption of our calcium, and so then, which is then directly related to our bone health, right? So in our bone health and the strength of our bones. But lately, vitamin D3, there's been studies done that shows that it's also important in regards to preventing different types of chronic diseases. Researchers are looking at vitamin D status in people who have cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancers, and they're finding associations with people who have low vitamin D levels and increased incidences of those diseases. So vitamin D is important for sure, and they're doing more and more research. So where do we get it? Because it's a fat-soluble vitamin in our food, we get it in fatty foods. So for example, fatty fish are a good source of vitamin D. So our salmon, trout, mackerel, all good sources of vitamin D. Liver, and I don't know how many people like liver, and not very many, probably because it's one of those foods that I hear a lot in terms of dislikes, but it's got a high amount of vitamin D, and the yolk of eggs actually has a relatively good amount of vitamin D. The other thing, which is wonderful in Canada, a lot of our foods, our dairy foods particularly, are supplemented or fortified with vitamin D. So all our cow's milk, those are supplemented, and margarine is supplemented with vitamin D. And then also now, because so many people are drinking non-dairy beverages like their almond milk, rice milks, etc., those you need to read the label, but many of those are fortified with vitamin D as well, which is good. So you want to look for that.
Next question is it important to take in more vitamins such as vitamin C or a multivitamin during this time?
Okay, so again, vitamin C is a micronutrient, a vitamin, but unlike vitamin D, it's one of our water-soluble vitamins. So what that means is that our body does not store a vitamin C. It is soluble in water. It goes through our body system, similar to water, I guess. And if we take too much, we excrete it. So if we take too much of a water-soluble vitamin, basically we pee it out. So that's where the difference is between vitamin C and vitamin D in terms of their solubility. Vitamin C is a very interesting vitamin, just like all the vitamins are. It's been shown to be involved in a lot of different processes in our body, but particularly it's been seen to, we know it helps with the growth of our tissues, repair of our tissues in our body. It helps with iron absorption. So we had that talk about iron deficiency earlier on, and we know that if we, for example, if you take an iron supplement, if you take it with a vitamin C, so if you take it with apple juice or orange juice, it enhances the absorption of iron. It helps with wound healing. We see that. Also, it's been shown to also be involved in our immune system. So there's a lot of different roles that the vitamin C plays. The interesting thing about vitamin C, and when I was looking it up for the adolescent, is that we don't need much vitamin C in our diet every day. So when I looked up for the group, the RDAs, or the recommended daily allowance for vitamin C for the ages of 14 and 18, which I think captures this group. The amount of vitamin C that we require is between 65 and 75 milligrams a day. That's what's required. Remembering that if we take more than that, we pee it out. So that's the requirement. So to put that into food language so that you can understand that, if you would have, and I just wrote this down just so that you would have an idea, if you had a medium orange, you would be getting 78 milligrams of vitamin C. Remembering that you need 65 to 75. That's your minimum requirement. If you had a half a cup of broccoli, you would have 57 milligrams. So you can see if you eat your fruits and vegetables, I know it doesn't sound very exciting like some of the diets out there, but this is what we talk about. It's that balanced intake. If you increase your fruit and vegetable intake, you're going to be nicely getting your vitamin C intake, as well as other vitamins like folate and B vitamins with the grains. This is why that balanced intake is so important. So our best sources would be our citrus fruits. Are excellent. Interesting, potatoes are very high in vitamin C, tomatoes, and even certain cereals have vitamin C added to them, again, because of kids, and kids generally like cereals, and they might not like their fruits and vegetables, so they add vitamin C to that. Where do we see deficiencies? Again, in North America, we don't see deficiencies of vitamin C very much. You probably read and heard in history class when, back years, centuries ago, when people would die of scurvy, and that was a vitamin deficiency because they didn't have enough vitamins and fruits and vegetables and vitamins and minerals, and so they would die of vitamin D deficiencies. Well, we really don't see that anymore, thankfully. But we do see decreased vitamin C levels in people who are smokers. What we see is that smoking causes what's called oxidative stress. And so what that is a stress on our body and our immune system, and that decreases vitamin C levels. So a good reason why not to smoke. We also see a decrease in vitamin C levels of people who have a very poor variety in their diet. I've met many people who eat hardly any fruits and vegetables, and so they have a decreased vitamin C intake. And then also people with chronic diseases, especially if there's malabsorption issues, so they're not absorbing vitamins and minerals properly. We see vitamin C and vitamin deficiencies with those people as well. So I guess so the question is, do I need a vitamin C supplement or multivitamins? So addressing vitamin C, I would say if you have a healthy balance and you enjoy fruits and vegetables, I would say probably not. You don't need a vitamin C supplement. The other, studies are looking at, and this is when I was doing my reading for this question, it was really interesting. They were looking at, vitamin C in terms of treatments of different cancers. I know, and just this is because of the work that I do, is that, patients who are, either have cancer or are trying to avoid cancer might take high levels of vitamin C. There's even some treatments, generally not in hospitals, but outside of hospitals, where there's IV of vitamin C trying to help with that. And the studies are really gray. There's not a lot of support in that. But this is vitamin C supplementation. But what there is support and what they see is that people who eat a good variety of fruits and vegetables have less cancers. People who eat more fruits and vegetables have less cardiovascular disease. So it's not the supplementation at the high levels, it's the whole fruits and vegetables. Is it the vitamin C? Maybe, but it could be some other things that we haven't even discovered yet that could be in there, plus the fiber and such. Common cold, a lot of people take a lot of vitamin C and before that. Again, the research, so these are studies that they're doing, actual studies, and it's gray whether that makes a difference. But, but we do see that people who eat good varieties in terms of their diet, healthy diets, don't get sick as much, have better immune systems. So that's my answer to your question. If you have a good balanced intake, then most likely you don't need a vitamin D, vitamin C supplement? Do you need a multivitamin? I would ask your family doctor, or I would get someone to look at your diet and see if it's deficient and whether a multivitamin would be something that would help in your situation.
Okay. What are dietitians doing to help our community during this pandemic? That's your last question.
Last question.
And where's your mom at stressedout.com mug?
Oh, I have a mug, but it's not that one. Okay, what are dietitians doing? So, yeah, it's a wonderful question. So I'm going to start with myself. And I am going to start by saying that I am very, very fortunate because of the job that I have is considered an outpatient dietitian. So I do work for a hospital. I work for Grand River Hospital. But the area that I work is deemed outpatients versus inpatients, where patients come to the hospital and stay because they're unwell. So any outpatient dietitian, we were asked to go home and work from home. So I am seeing patients virtually through my phone calls and doing education and assessments and such through the phone. Do I like this? No. I'm fortunate that I can do this. I so much prefer doing face-to-face. A lot of our communication, a lot of my assessment, when I look at someone, I can see, I can assess right away in terms of their body weight. I can see if they're understanding things I'm saying versus not. So, but it's the best. So, but I recognize that this is the best option right now, and so this is what I'm doing. Unfortunately, or fortunately, a lot of my colleagues are working frontline. Patients are still coming into the hospital, whether they're sick with COVID or sick with or something else. They are seeing those patients. They have the proper PPE, and they're doing assessments and feeding these patients, whether it's through a G-tube or through intravenous, or doing education or providing them with the proper diet and education in the hospitals. So they're frontline workers, and so they're with the nurses and the doctors and OTs and PTs and who are working in the hospital. What else am I doing? As a dietitian, I am eating healthy. I am exercising outside and inside. I make sure I'm not going to my yoga classes. I'm not going to my swimming that I'd like to go once a week and swim in the pool. But I am going for walks. I'm running outside. I am running with Claire.
You bike.
I bike. I love it. I'm going on my bike. I love being out there. Claire does exercises, so I join her sometimes with our stair routines. So I'm trying to keep as active as I possibly can, watching my snacking, but trying to stay as healthy as possible during this time of COVID. And I hope you and your families are able to do the same. I really wish all the best to you and to your teachers. I know this is a struggle for everyone, but we're going to get through this. There's going to be an end to this. And you know what? My hope is that we're going to learn from this, learn what's important in life, and learn how to take care of each other and how to take care of ourselves. Take care.
It was lovely.